It's important to recognize that the police retained all of the investigative abilities and charges and penalties that they've always had to deal with individuals who illegally produce and traffic marijuana. And so the police can still do that important job of enforcing those laws. But for the first time ever today, there is a competition in the marketplace, and Canadian adult consumers now have a choice. They can choose a healthier, safer, more socially responsible product that, as long as it's competitive in price and quality, choice and access, I think will be very effective in beginning the process of displacing that illicit market as adult consumers begin to make the healthier, safer choice. And so the police will continue to do their job to shut down those illegal producers and traffickers, and at the same time, what used to be the easiest money that organized crime group ever made, and they profit in the billions of dollars. It's estimated as much as $8 billion every single year is the revenue from this illicit trade. And we've now today begun the process of pushing them out of the marketplace. And it's not going to happen overnight. Let's be quite frank about this. It'll take some time for adult consumers to change their retail habits and to make better choices. And as provinces and territories build out their retail models, some of them are more advanced than others, but they all have a plan to move forward. And as those retail environments are built out, adult consumers again will have a legitimate, safer, more accessible and competitive choice.
Is that the real battleground then, to try to convince Canadians to go the legal way? Because I'm thinking in terms of people still buying edibles online, and that hasn't become legal yet in Canada. This is not through legal channels. Even dispensaries in big cities like Vancouver and Toronto still operating. Do you just have to convince Canadians instead of trying to go around and bust up all those operations?
Well, I can tell you this is day one, and on day one we've put the regulations and the framework in place to begin that important process of giving Canadians a safer and healthier choice. We've also said, with respect, and you mentioned edibles, that we've made a commitment that within 12 months we'll bring forward a very comprehensive regulatory framework. Edibles pose unique challenges and risks for adult consumers, and so we've got to make sure that the regulatory framework is in place so that people can be assured of its potency and purity, of dosage and dosage titration. There are risks inherent to this. We've learned from other jurisdictions. Went down to Colorado and Washington, who had similar experiences in displacing that particular market. We're developing those regulations, and they'll be in place within 12 months' time. And for those who are continuing to engage in this illicit business, they face the still potential of a criminal sanction. And as Canadian adult consumers have an increasing choice, a legitimate and safer choice, where they know the potency of what it is they're buying. They know that it doesn't contain chemicals unfit for human consumption. They can make safer, healthier choices. And in my experience, we learned this with gambling. Most gambling 30 years ago was done in an illicit environment. But when it was regulated, and when Canadian adult consumers had a regulated, safer, legitimate choice, they made it. And so that displaced organized crime from that previously illicit activity. And we're hoping to experience a similar change in consumer choice to move away from the illicit into a regulated supply.
Now, today, when the framework was announced for pardons for convictions for simple possession in the past, as a former police officer, did it give you any reflection or pause to think about all the wasted time and resources of those years to basically get those people?
Actually, no. The work that the police have been doing for over a century in this country is upholding the laws that existed. We had a system of cannabis control that was predicated on the criminal law, and those laws were constitutional. They were properly enforced and properly upheld in our courts. But we also recognize, and as we acknowledge today, the impact of those convictions has been pretty disproportionate. We're talking about an offense where people were in possession of cannabis only for their own personal use, no intent to distribute, not involved in the illegal trafficking of the drug, but only for themselves. And so there was no other victimization that took place there. And the impact of those criminal records is disproportionate to that offense. We want to give those individuals who have that conviction but have otherwise led exemplary lives, we want to give them a fresh start, the opportunity to lift the burden and the stigma of that conviction. And we also know that that conviction has been disparately impactful on poor communities and racialized communities and Indigenous communities. And so we're also taking the steps necessary to make sure that that pardon system is affordable and accessible for all Canadians.